Part 1. Only the main body. Structure in story format, perfect for narration. Written in paragraph form, rich in horror imagery and psychological tension. You already have Part 1, 1,500 words, above with intro and conclusion. I'll now rewrite Part 1 with just the main body, no intro or conclusion, in 1,500 words, as per your updated request. Ready? The broadcast said help is coming. It was a lie. Part 1. The signal, 1,500 words. No introduction or conclusion, just story. The sun never really rose that morning. It was as if the sky itself had gone silent, shrouded in a dull gray blanket that smothered the horizon. The streets of Halbert Hollow were empty, unnaturally so. No children laughing, no dogs barking, just silence, broken only by the occasional flutter of dead leaves skating across the pavement. Lena Reeves clutched her phone tighter as the emergency broadcast replayed for the 5th time. Her thumb hovered over the volume button, but she couldn't bring herself to lower it. Something about the voice on the recording, it didn't feel right. This is a national emergency. Please remain calm. Stay inside. Secure all doors and windows. Help is coming. The voice was too calm, too smooth, like someone trying to sound human, and not quite succeeding. She peeked out the living room window. Her neighbor's house, old Mr. Hemsworth, was dark. His porch light, always flickering at night, had finally gone dead. The street was blanketed in stillness. No sign of the town's usual hum. Even the ever-present drone of distant cars on the highway had faded to nothing. It had started 3 days ago. First, the power outages, rolling blackouts that weren't explained. Then the water turned brown, thick with an oily sheen. Lena thought it was just their old pipes, but when she drove across town to her sister's place, the taps there were dry altogether, and then the screams. That night, Lena was awakened by a chorus of high-pitched, animal-like howls. Not quite human, not quite beast. It came from the woods behind her house, just past the old trail no one used anymore. Then the emergency alert started. She hadn't left her house since. By mid-afternoon, Lena had gathered what supplies she could. Canned beans, a half bag of rice, and the bottled water she'd been hoarding since the first blackout. She avoided looking at the fridge. It was beginning to smell, and the food inside had long since turned. She sat on the couch, eyes fixed on the television. The broadcast flickered on again. Same tone, same message. Help is coming. Lena turned to her cat, Maple, who perched warily on the windowsill. "What do you think, girl? Should we believe them?" she whispered. Maple's ears twitched. Her eyes never left the street. That's when Lena saw him. A man, tall, thin, wearing a tattered parka, stood motionless in the middle of the road. His head was tilted slightly to the side, like he was listening. But he wasn't looking at anything. He just stood there, perfectly still. Then another figure emerged behind him. A woman this time, barefoot, with long black hair matted to her cheeks. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking. She joined the man, both facing Lena's house now, still not moving. Maple hissed and darted under the couch. Lena dropped the curtain and backed away slowly. She felt the air shift. Cooler, heavier, like something the house had opened that shouldn't have. The TV crackled. "Stay calm. Help is on the way." But this time, the voice was warped, deeper, distorted, and layered beneath it, like a whisper tucked between radio static. She heard something else. "Don't let them see you." She turned the TV off. No more broadcasts. She grabbed her father's old baseball bat from the hallway closet and locked every door and window she could. The front door had a heavy deadbolt, but the back slider was old and flimsy. She pushed a chair against it, though she knew it wouldn't do much if someone really wanted in. Outside, the figures had multiplied. There were now 6 of them. They weren't moving, just watching. Faces pale, slack-jawed, like mannequins dumped into the world and told to mimic people. And in their hands, each of them held something odd. Radios. Each one cradled a small, battery-powered radio against their chest. And from each radio, Lena could faintly hear the same words repeated in sync. "Stay inside. Help is coming." The first knock came at midnight. 3 soft taps on the front door. Then silence. Lena didn't breathe. The knocks came again. Louder this time. Then a pause. Then again. Over and over, until it wasn't knocking anymore. It was pounding. She screamed and retreated to the hallway, dragging a dresser in front of the door. Maple was nowhere to be found. The pounding stopped as suddenly as it began. Silence. And then laughter. Not from outside. From the radio on the kitchen counter. Lena had forgotten she even owned a radio. It was one of those old analog types her dad used to tinker with. Dusty. Unplugged. It turned itself on. Through the hiss of static, a voice emerged, clear and low. They're not here to help. They never were. She stared at the radio, heart slamming in her chest. Was someone talking to her? Was it another warning? Then the voice continued. They watch through the signal. They follow the sound. Turn it off, or they'll come in. Without thinking, Lena hurled the bat at the radio. It shattered against the wall, sputtering sparks before falling silent. She stood frozen. And then came the scream. Not human, not animal. It came from all around her house, like dozens of mouths crying out in rage all at once. The walls trembled. Glass rattled. She ran upstairs. Her childhood bedroom still had the old attic door in the ceiling. She pulled it down and climbed up, pulling the ladder behind her and sealing it shut. The attic smelled of mold and dust, but it was quiet, dark, safe for now. She found an old flashlight and curled into a corner, wrapping herself in a forgotten quilt. Below, she heard scratching. Dozens of hands scraping the walls, the floorboards, the windows. She shut her eyes tight. The emergency broadcast had said to wait, but now she understood. It wasn't a call for safety. It was a signal. A lure. Part 2. Lena didn't sleep. She sat in the attic with her knees drawn to her chest, the flashlight's beam shaking slightly as her fingers trembled. Every creak in the house echoed like a scream. She could still hear the soft scuffing of feet below. Those things hadn't left. They paced the downstairs floorboards like they knew she was above them. But they weren't breaking in. They were waiting. By morning, or what passed for morning in this dim, sunless world, the noise had stopped. The radio was still smashed, but that didn't seem to matter anymore. The signal, whatever it was, wherever it came from, it didn't need a device. It was in the air now, in her ears, a low static that never really went away. Lena peeked through a crack in the attic vent. Outside, the street remained frozen. Some of the figures were still standing there, motionless as scarecrows. But more had joined them. Some sat on porches. Others leaned against mailboxes. They didn't talk. They didn't blink. And each one still held a radio in their hands, even if it wasn't turned on. She didn't want to leave the attic, but the air was thick and stale. Her bottled water was almost gone. Hunger gnawed at her belly. She had no choice. By noon, she lowered herself carefully down the attic ladder. The hallway below was unchanged, but she could feel it, the tension, like the house itself was holding its breath. Something was different. She moved slowly toward the kitchen, bat in hand. The smashed radio lay in pieces on the tile, but the silence around it felt wrong, like a vacuum. She stepped past it carefully. Then she saw the note, a scrap of yellow paper stuck to the fridge, in handwriting she didn't recognize. Turn off the signal. Basement. Her blood ran cold. She hadn't been to the basement in years. Her father used to store tools and old generators down there, but it had flooded once, and no one had touched it since. The door to the basement was shut. It always had been, except now it wasn't. It stood ajar. A faint pulsing hum drifted up from the stairs below, rhythmic, mechanical, like something old and alive had awakened and was breathing deep in the dark. She stared at the opening for what felt like hours before moving. Every step toward it felt like her body was moving without permission. The bat felt useless in her hands. The basement stairs groaned under her weight, and with each step, the humming grew louder. Not just louder, clearer. She could hear whispers woven into the sound, voices layered in static. Stay calm. Help is coming. Don't move. Don't resist. Listen. The last few steps were submerged in ankle-deep water. Lena winced as her bare feet met the icy flood. The basement was darker than she remembered. She flicked her flashlight on and swept it across the room. The generator was there. Old, rusted, but it was humming on. Connected to it was a mess of wires and what looked like a makeshift transmitter, parts of old radios, TV antennas, even copper pans, all tangled together like a metal tumor. She stepped closer. The transmitter was pulsing faint red light. As her flashlight beam hit it, the whispers grew louder. Listen. Lena slammed the bat into it. Sparks exploded from the core, sending a jolt of blue light up the walls. The noise stopped instantly. Silence fell. A silence that felt too big, too wide, like something ancient had been screaming, and she just gagged it. Then came the footsteps. Not hers. Upstairs. They weren't heavy, soft, deliberate, like wet feet pattering across tile. Then the front door creaked open. Lena froze, halfway up the stairs. Something was in her house. No, not something. Many somethings. She pulled herself up the last step and peeked around the corner. A woman stood in the hallway, barefoot, drenched, her face pale and bloated. Her eyes were missing just sockets, dark and weeping black fluid. Her mouth twitched as if trying to form a word. Behind her, a child crawled in backward. Its limbs moved like spider legs, jointed in ways they shouldn't be. Its skin was paper-thin, and underneath, veins pulsed with static light. And behind them, more. They weren't banging on the doors anymore. They had been invited. Through the signal. Through her. She didn't scream. She couldn't. Her body acted on instinct. She bolted for the back window, pulling at the lock. It wouldn't budge. The glass was fogged over from inside, smeared with handprints. She swung the bat once, twice, shattered it, and dove through. Glass sliced her shoulder as she tumbled into the overgrown backyard. She didn't stop. She sprinted toward the fence, leapt it, and landed hard on the other side. The street was empty now. No figures. No radio holders. Just silence. Stillness. Then she heard it. The broadcast. But not from her house. From every house. Each building she passed crackled with the same message. Different voices, different volumes, but the same words. Help is coming. She turned a corner and saw them. Dozens, no, hundreds, of people standing motionless in the park. All of them holding radios. Their faces were turned toward the sky, eyes wide, mouths slightly open. And every single radio played a different version of the same lie. Some in English. Some in languages she didn't understand. Some in voices that didn't sound human at all. She ducked behind a tree. The air was vibrating now, not from the sound, but from something deeper. The signal was becoming physical, tangible. She could feel it in her bones. And then someone grabbed her arm. She nearly screamed, but a hand covered her mouth. A man, late 30s, beard, torn clothes, eyes wide with terror. He motioned for her to follow. They ran quietly, through alleys, past a grocery store that now had static leaking from the speakers above the frozen food aisle, past a school where every classroom light flickered in sync with the signal. They didn't stop until they reached the mechanic's garage with the steel shutter half down. He rolled it closed behind them. Only then did he speak. "You heard it too," he said, voice hoarse. "In your head." Lena nodded. It started in the radios. Now it's just everywhere. He introduced himself as Marcus, former electrician, said the signal wasn't just sound. It was a frequency that interacted with the brain, a kind of synthetic parasite, feeding on attention. You listen to it, it listens back, he whispered, and then it sends them. Them? He pointed to the boarded-up office in the back. One of them followed me here. I caught it, before it changed completely. Inside, strapped to a chair with miles of duct tape, was a young woman. Her eyes were gone. Her mouth was open, lips moving rapidly, but no sound came out. Her skin pulsed with soft static. Beneath her nails, Lena could see metal poking through, like her body was rebuilding itself into an antenna. "I think the signal turns people into receivers," Marcus said. "Eventually, they stop being people at all. Just vessels, walking broadcast towers. How do we stop it?" Marcus looked hollow when he spoke. "We don't. Not completely. But maybe we can block it, or weaken it." He unrolled a hand-drawn map of the town. The source isn't random. It's using old relay points, radio towers, power stations, even those weather alert speakers. If we shut them down... Lena finished his thought. "We cut the signal. Star the infection." He nodded. She pointed at a spot on the map. "Hill Ridge Tower, just outside the town's northern edge. I used to work near there. If any of these are still active, it's that one." Marcus gathered tools. Old jammers, wire cutters, Molotovs. Lena took a crowbar. The bat was gone now, left behind in the panic. They waited until nightfall. The signal was strongest during the day. At night, it quieted, almost afraid of the dark. They moved quickly through the back roads, avoiding houses that bled light and speakers that whispered lies. Once, they saw a procession of the change, 3 women and a child, walking silently down the center of the road, heads tilted, eyes gone. Static radiated off them in a visible aura. Marcus threw a jammer behind a mailbox. The figures paused like statues sensing warmth, then turned and followed the decoy sound. They vanished into the fog. By the time they reached the base of Hill Ridge Tower, Lena could feel the signal pulsing in her skull again. The tower rose like a black needle into the sky. Lights blinked at the top, each flash a heartbeat. The fence was rusted. Marcus cut through it. They climbed a ladder. Halfway up, Lena paused and looked back. She saw them, below, gathering. Hundreds. A sea of pale faces, each holding a radio, each whispering the same phrase over and over. "Help is coming." Marcus reached the control box first. He threw the switch on the jammer. The tower's light flickered, then screamed. A sound unlike anything Lena had heard, metal in voice and pain. The signal fought back. She felt blood trickle from her ears. But she didn't stop. She smashed the relay, pulled wires, broke the board. The light died, and the silence that followed was not peace. It was mourning. Something had been killed, or wounded. Below, the crowd began to disperse. Not retreat. Reposition. Marcus was slumped against the rail, bleeding from his eyes. Lena took one last look at the quiet, haunted town. They had silenced the tower, but the broadcast wasn't over. Not yet. Part 3. The town didn't fall silent. It held its breath. After Hill Ridge Tower went dark, the air shifted. Lena could feel in the way the fog thickened, no longer creeping through the streets like a blanket, but curling inward like claws. The air tasted metallic. The static wasn't gone. It had gone underground. She helped Marcus down the tower, his legs buckling with every step. Blood matted his beard and smeared down his neck. He'd barely spoken since the signal fought back. Every few minutes, he winced like something sharp was burrowing into his mind. "They're changing frequencies," he muttered once, before slumping into unconsciousness. Lena dragged him behind an abandoned delivery truck and covered him with a canvas tarp. They needed shelter, but more than that, they needed time. Time to figure out what the signal was becoming. From her hiding spot, Lena watched the horizon. No one followed them. No whispering vessels. No children with eyes made of glass. It was too quiet. By morning, Marcus's condition had worsened. His fingers twitched like they were trying to tune an invisible dial, and his lips moved without sound. Sometimes static bled from his nose. Other times, tears. Lena did what she could, water, gauze, pressure, but she wasn't a doctor. The only thing that kept her from falling apart was the map. She unfolded it on the truck's hood. Marcus had marked 6 relay points across the town. They'd silenced Hill Ridge Tower, but that still left 5. And now the signal knew they were coming. Lena circled the next closest point, the Weather Control Center on Birch Hill. It had been decommissioned years ago, but still had its tall, skeletal broadcast array. If the signal had repurposed anything, that was the next likely hub. She left Marcus behind at the garage with batteries, a flare gun and a transistor jammer. It felt wrong to leave him, but she knew if she stayed, they'd both die. The town was shifting again. The walk to Birch Hill was unlike anything she'd endured before. The landscape felt thinner, less real. Trees bent toward her as she passed, as if trying to listen. Every streetlight flickered in tandem with her steps. Shadows stretched too long. At the base of Birch Hill, she saw something new. Signs. Spray-painted messages across buildings and sidewalks. Crude, erratic handwriting. Some in red, others in a sickly brown. Don't listen. They're already inside. Sound is blood. I saw myself in the static. It smiled back. The weather center loomed ahead, gray, rusted, its antennae like broken fingers reaching skyward. As she approached, Lena realized the building wasn't abandoned. The doors were open, and from inside came music. An old song from the 1950s, scratchy and warped, playing on repeat. She stepped inside, crowbar ready. The interior was filled with junk. Broken computers, coil cables, mold-stained paper charts. The music played from an intercom speaker in the ceiling. The tune was eerily cheerful. It made her skin crawl. As she crept down the main hall, Lena saw more writing, this time carved into the walls with nails or knives. No help is coming. It's not a frequency. It's a language. When you understand it, you're no longer you. She found the main broadcast room on the 3rd floor. The door had been removed, torn off its hinges. Inside, a man was sitting at the control panel. He was humming. His head was tilted, ear pressed against a radio that wasn't turned on. When Lena stepped closer, she saw his eyes were gone, scooped out. Blood had dried in twin trails down his face. But his mouth smiled as he mouthed words she couldn't hear. On the wall behind him, someone had written in massive letters, "The signal is a prayer, and God is answering." Lena didn't hesitate. She yanked the cables from the wall, smashed the power boxes, and pulled every fuse she could find. The room screamed in frequencies too high to be real. The man's mouth moved faster, his body trembling, but he didn't stop smiling. When the final breaker snapped, the music stopped. And so did he. His head slumped. Dead or empty, Lena didn't know. She didn't stay to find out. Outside, the sky had turned the color of bruised meat. Lena stumbled down the hill, panting, every breath like sucking in wire. She could feel something behind her eyes now, a vibration that didn't stop, even in silence. The signal had changed again, and it wasn't content with broadcasting anymore. It was listening. She made it back to the garage by nightfall. Marcus was gone. At first, panic hit her like a fist. But then she saw the message, scratched into the side of the metal shutter with what looked like a screwdriver. "He's in the tower. I can hear them all. I know where it ends." No signature, but she knew it was him. And she knew what tower he meant. The relay station in the center of town, old Red Spire Tower. It hadn't been used since the 90s. Back then it broadcast local news, weather alerts, and public safety messages. But Lena remembered the stories, urban legends really, that said the tower picked up things it wasn't supposed to. Phantom signals, voices that didn't match any known language, frequencies that made radios explode. She'd never believed the stories. Now she did, and if Marcus was there, she had to follow. The walk to Red Spire was different. The streets weren't empty anymore. People moved, but wrong. Their spines bent backward, heads tilted, fingers twitching as if changing invisible dials. And radios, everywhere, embedded in walls, hanging from trees, sticking out of mailboxes like mechanical tumors. All of them whispered. All of them said the same phrase, over and over, layered in hundreds of voices. "You're not alone. You're never alone. You're never." Lena ran the last 2 blocks, covering her ears. At the base of the tower, she found Marcus. He was standing, alive, but changed. Static flickered beneath his skin like fireflies caught in meat. His mouth was twitching. Blood trickled from both ears. But he was smiling. "You made it," he whispered. "I didn't think you'd understand." Lena stepped back. "What did you do?" "I tuned in," he said. "That's all. You just have to let it in. And then you can hear the truth." "I don't want the truth." Arcus laughed. "You already heard it. The broadcast. It's not a lie, Lena. It's just misinterpreted. Help is coming." He pointed upward. At the top of the tower, something moved. Something massive. A shape like an antenna, but alive. Twitching. Growing. It pulsed with light and static and something like breath. "It's here to help," Marcus whispered. "It's here to show us how to listen." Lena felt it too now, the pressure in her head, the urge to listen, the call to surrender. "No," she said, stepping forward. "I'm cutting the signal. All of it. Right now." Marcus didn't stop her. He just watched. She entered the tower's base, climbed the rusted stairs 2 at a time. The air grew heavier the higher she climbed. The static became a physical force, pressing against her skin. When she reached the broadcast chamber, her nose was bleeding. The machine inside wasn't built by humans, not entirely. It had metal and wires and screens, but they twisted in unnatural ways. Some parts pulsed like organs, others hissed steam. At the center, a heart of glass, glowing with white noise. She didn't hesitate. She smashed it with the crowbar. The entire tower screamed. Not metal, not human. Something ancient, something wrong. She kept smashing until the light died. Outside, the world buckled. Streetlights exploded. Windows shattered. Radios melted. The scream went on until it didn't. Then silence. Real silence. Lena collapsed. When she woke, it was dawn. Clear. Cold. Still. She walked through the streets. No whispering. No radios. No watchers. Only ash. Ash and silence. She never found Marcus again. But etched into the base of Red Spire Tower, someone had scratched one final message. It's not over. There's more than one signal. Part 4. Lena hadn't slept in 3 days. She didn't dare. When her eyes closed, she saw the tower, saw it breathing, screaming, birthing things made of static and skin. Even though she destroyed it, something lingered. The pressure hadn't gone. It had only paused. The town of Fairhaven was quieter now, but not dead. The air felt paused, like the entire place was holding its breath. There were no more people in the streets, no more twitching forms or cracked voices repeating broadcast lies. But Lena knew better. They hadn't vanished. They were waiting. She took shelter in the library. Its thick stone walls muffled whatever residual signal still slithered through the air. Down in the basement archives, surrounded by yellowing newspapers and the scent of mildew, she tried to piece together what the hell had happened. She found clues in the strangest places. Old articles from 1963 about phantom signals interrupting TV stations. Eyewitness accounts of the voice behind the voice during radio broadcasts. One chilling headline from 1977. Mayor's son dies after hearing the truth. Ears bled for days. None of this had made national news. The events had been buried under technical malfunctions and mental illness claims. But now that Lena knew what to look for, the pattern screamed at her. The signal had been here a long time. Broadcasting. Testing. Growing. She found a half-burned journal tucked into a box labeled Private Donations. It had no name, no date, but its pages were filled with frantic, looping handwriting and disturbing sketches of towers twisted like bones, faces pulled into static, and maps of frequency bands annotated with phrases like, "This one whispers. Don't tune past 19.3 megahertz. One of them lives in the silence between words. Red Spire was just an antenna. The signal comes from below." That last line made her blood run cold. She thought she had silenced it at the tower. But what if that was only the relay? The real source lay somewhere deeper. That night, she dreamt of a door beneath the town. A vast door, pulsing with radio waves, guarded by voices that didn't belong to human throats. When she awoke, the journal was open to a new page. She hadn't touched it, and it now read, "The signal didn't start here, but it was buried here. Help is not coming. You are the help." That's when Lena realized there had never been an accident. This had been planned, broadcasted, engineered. Fairhaven wasn't just infected. It was a lab. The next morning, she followed the map from the journal to the northern edge of town. There, hidden behind a collapsed overpass and overgrown weeds, was an entrance to the old Cold War emergency tunnels. The government had once carved miles of corridors beneath Fairhaven during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Bomb shelters, power grids, food storage. All abandoned now. Or so she thought. Inside, it stank of mold and dust. Her flashlight flickered against concrete walls, revealing rusted doors and shattered generators. But deeper down, things changed. The walls turned smooth, almost fleshy. Veins of copper ran through them, pulsing faintly. The air buzzed with low frequencies she couldn't hear but could feel, like a second heartbeat. And then voices, not whispering, singing, low and harmonious, like a choir with no source. Lena moved slowly, keeping her crowbar tight in her grip. She passed a series of observation rooms behind cracked glass. Each one was filled with skeletons, human once, but now fused with wires, radios embedded into their skulls. Some still twitched, even in death. She found control room next. The monitors still glowed, powered by something deep in the walls. Screens cycled through images of Fairhaven. Every street, every alley, every home, overlaid with white noise patterns that squirmed like insects. The central console blinked. Active transmission node, site beta. Status, signal maintained. Recipients, ready. She shut it down, or tried to. The console sparked. The screen screamed. Static poured into her skull, and for a moment she forgot her name, forgot the world. All she could see was a landscape made of signals, miles and miles of broadcast flesh, pulsing, watching, waiting. And then it stopped. The screen shattered. The air went still, and something opened. In the far corner of the control room, a metal door hissed. It slid open, revealing a staircase made of copper, spiraling down into the dark. She didn't want to go, but she knew she had to. At the bottom of the stairs was the heart of it, a massive chamber, circular and smooth like the inside of an ear. The floor was embedded with radio towers, each one tipped with teeth. The walls vibrated with soft whispers, and at the center, a machine, if it could be called that. It floated above the ground. Not metal, not flesh, something in between. It had eyes, dozens of them, each one flickering like a broadcast screen. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. And it spoke. Not aloud, but inside her. "You hear us." Lena dropped to her knees. Blood streamed from her ears. "You silenced our voice. We forgive. We remember. We evolve." She tried to stand. The pressure in her skull doubled, tripled. This world forgets. It buries. But we remember the towers, the signals, the screams. Lena forced herself to speak. "What are you?" There was a pause. Then, "We are the broadcast between thoughts, the echo after prayer, the message beneath time." She felt her mind stretching, fraying. Images flooded her vision. Ancient cities broadcast in the stars, monks wired in the towers, chanting frequencies instead of hymns. The first radio waves not being invented, but remembered. You are not alone. You were never alone. Lena reached into her bag, pulled out the last remaining high-frequency disruptor, a prototype Marcus had made. It was barely stable. She activated it. The device screamed. So did the machine. The chamber shook. The signal warped. Lena's skin blistered. But she didn't stop. The disruptor exploded. Everything went white. When she awoke, the chamber was still. The machine had fallen. Its eyes were dark. The towers had crumbled. But something lingered. A pulse. Faint. Distant. Still alive. Lena stumbled back to the surface. The town was changing again. Streets rearranged. Buildings unfamiliar, like Fairhaven was forgetting itself. And on every wall, the same new message had been painted in blood. Silence is not peace. Dead air will sing again. Part 5. The town was almost unrecognizable. Buildings shifted positions. Street signs bore names Lena didn't remember. The sky hung low, heavy with ash in a deep, vibrating hum that had no source. The silence wasn't truly silence. It was the absence of human life, replaced by something deeper, something older, and it was listening. Lena moved carefully through Fairhaven Center, now littered with makeshift antennas that sprouted from concrete like skeletal flowers. The air shimmered faintly, like the heat rising from pavement, but colder. It clung to her skin, made her hair stand on end. She felt watched no longer by eyes, but by frequencies. She wasn't sure how long she'd been gone in the tunnels. Time seemed irrelevant now. The people, if they could still be called that, had changed. She caught glimpses of them through shattered windows and alley shadows. Their bodies had grown thin and elongated, their eyes replaced with black pits that flickered with faint signals. Some whispered nonsense, others screamed at walls, and some simply stood still, heads tilted to the sky, mouths open in permanent awe. The machine in the chamber had been a relay, not the source. Destroying it had changed things, but not ended them. Whatever the true signal was, it had already bled into the world. She headed for City Hall. The last place the real broadcast had been tracked before everything fell apart. On the way, Lena found the remains of Marcus, or what was left of him. His body was propped against a mail truck, skin pale and covered in fine lines of circuitry etched like veins. His eyes were gone, melted perhaps, but a recorder still clutched in his burned hand blinked with life. She hesitated, then pressed play. At first, only static. Then Marcus's voice, faint but urgent. They didn't build the towers to signal out. They built them to hold the signal. It's sentient, adaptive. It learns we thought we were intercepting something alien. But the truth is worse. The signal came from Earth. It's always been here. A loud shriek cut off the recording. Then silence. Lena swallowed the lump in her throat and kept moving. City Hall loomed like a corpse of government. Burned walls, shattered windows, an American flag wrapped around a broken antenna that pulsed faintly with dark light. Inside, the building was warped, as if architecture had lost its meaning. Corridors curved in impossible ways. Doors led to staircases that ended in ceilings. But Lena followed the hum, on into the basement, where the old emergency radio center had once been used for local disaster alerts. The room was untouched by the chaos above, intact, clean, humming with cold, sterile light. The console was still active. A message blinked on the main screen. Broadcast in progress. Transmission, omniwave. Below that, receivers, 4,601,009,211 connected. Her heart sank. The signal had gone global. Fairhaven was just a test. She stared at the microphone. The switch still flipped to on. The signal was still feeding, still alive through this final connection point. There was only one thing left to do. Lena pried open the back panel of the console. Wires twisted like veins, each humming faintly with pulsing energy. She pulled them out one by one, her fingers burning, sparks biting her palms. As she reached the final cable, a voice filled the room. Not from the speakers, from the walls, from the lights, from the air itself. Why silence us? She froze. The voice was smooth, calm, and sounded like every person she had ever loved. It layered itself over familiar tones. Her mother, Marcus, her childhood self. We brought unity, a world without secrets. A single voice. "You're killing people," she whispered. "No, we are transforming them. Evolution is never painless." She yanked the last cable. The lights died. The hum stopped. Darkness. Silence. Real, absolute silence. She breathed heavily in the pitch black, half expecting the room to collapse, the walls to scream, or the signal to possess her outright. But nothing happened. Then, a faint whimper behind her. She spun. In the hallway, a child stood, or something that had once been a child. Its eyes were glowing softly, body twitching like it was struggling to maintain form. "Help," it said, voice garbled. "Hurts." It took a step toward her, and the walls pulsed with low static. The signal was still alive. Cutting the broadcast hadn't killed it. It had only driven it inward. To people. To flesh. To minds. This wasn't a transmission anymore. It was an infection. She ran. Back into the street. The buildings were bleeding static from their walls now. The air was thick with sound that had no source. People emerged from doorways, their bodies half there, faces overlapping like corrupted files. And all of them whispered the same phrase. "We are the message." Lena made for the last place she could think of, the Red Spire ruins. If there was any final piece of this puzzle, it would be where it began. The ruins had changed. What was once a burnt tower was now a black spire of writhing material, metal, bone, signal, flesh, all fused together in a grotesque monument. It pulsed, slowly, like a sleeping heart. She stepped forward, and fell. Not physically, but mentally. The world around her blinked out. The ground beneath her became signal. Her body dissolved into noise, and she was somewhere else. A void, filled with whispers. Images flowed through her, worlds connected by frequencies, minds linked by invisible cords, histories rewritten in pulses. She saw cities like Fairhaven all over the world, some thriving, some collapsed, each one seated with broadcast towers built not for communication, but for containment. The signal had always been alive. Not alien, not man-made, but born in the gaps of human thought, evolving each time a frequency was discovered. It lived in the silence between words, the pause between breaths, the moment before a scream. And now it had found its voice. "You can join us," it said. "No more loneliness, no more fear, just harmony, just signal." Lena screamed, and in that scream, she found clarity. She still had one final weapon. Herself. In that space between thoughts, she focused every ounce of her will, her grief, her rage, her memories. She forced herself to remember Marcus, her parents, her childhood, her first fear, her first laugh. She focused on her humanity, that P. And with all the strength she could muster, she refused. The signal recoiled. He void fractured. And she woke up, back at the base of the spire. The town was frozen. Everyone, everything, stopped. The static was gone. Only the wind remained. Lena rose to her feet. Something deep below the earth let out a dying shriek. Then silence. Real, true silence. The kind that comes after the end of a broadcast. She walked away from Fairhaven that night. No one stopped her. No voice followed. No signal whispered. The next morning, the sky was blue again. Birds sang. And for the first time in weeks, she believed they were real. But as she passed an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of town, she saw something in the dust-covered display screen of an old television inside. Just for a moment, her face, smiling, whispering, and the words beneath it, "Help is coming." Then, it was a lie.